Last time we read a poem, so I figured today we could do a short story. It's always good to switch up your genres and mediums, that way you don't get stuck in the same rut and can continue to enjoy literature for days on end. And keep in mind that a short story, even though it is short, does take a small length of time to work through. However, I can always make sure that my sultry voice is more than enough than my appealing looks to keep this video open in your tab. The story I chose for today is A&P by John Updike. He was born in 1932, and to the extent of my knowledge at this time has not yet passed away. Why I chose this story is because it's often anthologized and chosen, especially in literature classes, for its popularity and not having a true ending. The original story that John Updike did have an ending, but was taken out in later revisions, and in fact makes for a better story in literature to read because it leaves it open for the reader to decide on how it ends and how it goes, and just how it continues on. However, we'll get more to that at the end of the story. Without further ado, A&P by John Updike. In walks these girls, in nothing but bathing suits. I'm in the third checkout slot with my hair back to the door, so I don't see them until they're over by the bread. The one that caught my eye first was the one in the plaid green two-piece. She was a chunky kid with a good tan and a sweet, broad, soft-looking can with those two crescents of white just under it, where the sun never seems to hit at the top of the back of the legs. I stood there with my hand on a box of Hi-Ho crackers, trying to remember if I rang it up or not. I ring it up again and the customer starts giving me hell. She's one of these cash register watches, a witch about 50 with rogue on her cheekbones and no eyebrows, and I know it made her day to trip me up. She'd been watching cash registers for 50 years and probably never seen a single mistake before. By the time I got her feathers smoothed and her goodies into her bag, she gives me a little snort in passing. If she'd been born at the right time, they would have burned her over in Salem. By the time I get her on her way, the girls had circled around the bread and were coming back with a pushcart. Back my way along the counters and the aisle between the checkouts and the special bins. They didn't even have shoes on. There was this chunky one with a two-piece. It was bright green and the seams on the bra were still sharp and her belly was pretty pale, so I'd guess she'd just gotten it, the suit. There was this one with one of those chubby berry faces, the lips all bunched together under her nose. This one and a tall one, with black hair that hadn't quite frizzed, and one of those sunburns right across under the eyes, and a chin that was too long. You know, the kind that other girls think is attractive and striking, but never quite makes it, as they very well know, which is why they like her so much. And then the third one, that wasn't quite so tall. She was the queen, the kind that led them. And then the third one, that wasn't quite so tall. She was the queen. She kinda led them, the other two peeking around and making their shoulders around. She didn't look around, not this queen. She just walked straight on slowly on these long white prima donna legs. She came down a little hard on her heels, as if she didn't walk in bare feet that much, putting down her heels and then letting the weight move along to her toes, as if she was testing the floor with every step, putting a little deliberate extra action into it. You never know for sure how girls' minds work. Do you really think it's a mind in there at all, or just a bee buzzing around in a glass jar? But you got the idea that she talked the other two into coming here with her, and now she was showing them how to do it. Walk slow and hold yourself straight. She had on a kind of dirty pink, beige, maybe, I don't know, bathing suit with a little nubble, and all over it. What got me? The straps were down. They were off her shoulders, looped loose around the cool tops of her arms, and I guess as a result, the suit had slipped a little on her, so all around the top of the cloth there was this shining rim. If it hadn't been there, you wouldn't have known that there could have been anything wider than those shoulders. With the straps pushed off, there was nothing between the top of the suit and the top of her head except just her. This clean, bare plane of the top of her chest, down from the shoulder bones like a dented sheet of metal tilted in the light. I mean, it was more than pretty. She had a sort of oaky hair that the sun and salt had bleached, done up in a bun that was unraveling, and a kind of prim face. Walking into the A.M.P. with your straps down, I suppose it's the only kind of face you can have. She held her head so high, her neck coming up out of those white shoulders, looked kind of stretched, but I didn't mind. The longer her neck was, the more of her there was. She must have felt in the corner of her eye, me and over my shoulder, Stokesy in the corner, slot watching. But she didn't tip. Not this queen. She kept her eyes moving across the racks and stopped and turned so slow it made the stomach rub against the inside of my apron and buzzed to the other two, who kind of huddled against her for relief. And then they, all three of them, went up to the cat and dog food, breakfast, cereal, macaroni, rice, raisins, seasoning spread, spaghetti, soft drinks, crackers, and cookies aisle. From the third slot, I look up this aisle to the meat counter, and I watch them all the way. The fat one with the tan sort of fumbled with the cookies, but on second thought, she put the package back. The sheep were pushing their carts down the aisle. The girls were walking against the usual traffic. Not that we have signs or anything. It was pretty hilarious. You could see them when Queenie's white shoulders dawned on them. Kind of jerk or hop or hiccup, but their eyes snapped back to their own baskets, and on they pushed. I bet you could set off a dynamite in an A&P store, and the people would by and large keep reaching and checking oatmeal off their lists and muttering, "Let me see, there was something else. It began with A. Asparagus. No. It was applesauce. Yes." Or whatever it is they do mutter. But there was no doubt this jiggled them. A few house slaves and pin curlers even looked around after pushing their carts past to make sure that what they had seen was correct. You know, it's one thing to have a girl in a bathing suit down on the beach, wear that white glare, nobody can look at each other much anyway, and another thing in the cool of the A&P under the fluorescent lights against all those stacked packages with their feet paddling along naked over our checkerboard green and cream rubber tile floor. "Oh, Daddy," Stokesy said beside me. "I feel so faint." "Darlin'," I said, "hold me tight." Stokesy married with 2 babies, chalked up his fuselage already, but as far as I can tell, that's the only difference. He's 22 and I was 19 this April. "Is it done?" he asks, the responsible married man finding his voice. "I forgot to say he thinks he's going to be manager some sunny day. Maybe in 1990, when it's called the Great Alexandrov and the Petrovsky Tea Company or something." What he meant was, our town is 5 miles from a beach, with a big summer colony out on the point. But we're right in the middle of town, and the women generally put on a short, or shirt, or something, before they get out of the car and into the street. And anyway, these are usually women with 6 children and varicose veins mapping their legs, and nobody, including them, could care less. As I say, we're right in the middle of town, and if you stand at our front doors, you can see 2 banks and the Congregational Church, and the newspaper store, and 3 real estate offices, and about 27 old freeloaders tearing up Central Street because the sewer broke again. It's not as if we're on the Cape. We're north of Boston, and there's people in this town haven't even seen the ocean for 20 years. The girls had reached the meat counter and were asking Mick Mahone something. He pointed, they pointed, and they shuffled out of sight behind a pyramid of Diet Delight peaches. All that was left for us to see was old Mick Mahone patting his mouth and looking after sizing up their joints. Poor kids, I began to feel sorry for them. They couldn't help it. Now here comes the sad part of the story. At least my family says it's sad, but I don't think it's sad myself. The store is pretty empty, it being Thursday afternoon, so there's nothing much to do except lean on the register and wait for the girls to show up again. The whole store was like a pinball machine, and I didn't know which tunnel they'd come out of. After a while, they'd come around out of the far aisle around the light bulbs. Records at a discount to the Caribbean Six or Tony Martin Sings, or some such gunk you wonder they waste the wax on. 6 packs of candy bars and plastic toys done up in the cellophane that fall apart when a kid looks at them in any way. Around they come, Queenie still leading the way and holding a little gray jar in her hands. Slots 3 through 7 are unmanned, and I could see her wandering between Stokes and me. But Stokesy, with his usual luck, draws an old party in baggy gray pants, who stumbles up with 4 giant cans of pineapple juice. What do these bums do with pineapple juice? I often ask myself. So the girls come to me. Queenie puts down the jar and I take it into my fingers, icy cold. Kingfish fancy herring snacks and pure sour cream, 49 cents. Now our hands are empty, not a ring or a bracelet, bare as God made them, and I wonder where the money's coming from. Still, from that prim look, she lifts a dollar bill out of the hollow at the center of her nibbled pink top. The jar went heavy in my hand. Really, I thought it was cute. Then everybody's luck begins to run out. Langle comes in from hagging with a truck full of cabbages, and on the lot is about to scuttle in that door marked manager, behind him which he hides all day, when the girls touch his eye. Langle's pretty dreary, teaches Sunday school and the rest, but he doesn't miss that much. He comes over and says,
"Girls, this isn't the beach." Queenie blushes.
though maybe it's not just a blush of sunburn. I was noticing for the first time, now that she was close. My mother asked me to pick up a jar of herring snacks. Her voice kind of startled me, the way that voices do when you see the people first, coming out so flat and dumb, yet kind of tony too, the way it ticked over pickup and snacks. All of a sudden, I slid right down her voice and into her living room. Her father and other men were standing around in ice cream coats and bow ties, and women wearing sandals picking up herring snacks on toothpicks off a big glass plate, and they were all holding drinks the color of water with olives and sprigs of mint in them. When my parents have somebody over, they get lemonade, and if it's a real fancy affair, Schlitz and tall glasses with, they'll do it every time, cartoons stenciled on. That's right, Langle said, but this isn't the beach. His repeating this struck me as funny, as if it had just occurred to him, and he'd been thinking all these years that A&P was a great big dune, and he was the head lifeguard. He didn't like my smiling. As I say, he doesn't miss much, but he concentrates on giving the girls that sad Sunday school superintendent stare. Queenie's blush is no sunburn now, and the plump one is plaid that I like better from the back. A real sweet can pipes up. We weren't doing any shopping. We just came in for one thing.
"That makes no difference," Langle tells her, and I could see from the way her eyes went that he hadn't noticed she was wearing a two-piece before. "We want you decently dressed when you come in here."
We are decent, Queenie says, suddenly her lower lip pushing, getting sore now that she remembers her place. A place from which the crowd that runs the A&P must look pretty crummy. Fancy herring snacks that flashed in her very blue eyes.
"Girls, I don't want to argue with you. After this, come in here with your shoulders covered. It's our policy." He turns his back. "That's policy for you. Policy is what the kingpins want, what the others want in juvenile delinquency." All this while, the customer had been showing up with their carts. But you know sheep. Seeing a scene, they had all bunched up on Stokesy, who shook open a paper bag as gently as peeling a peach, not wanting to miss a word. I could feel the silence and everybody getting nervous, most of all Langle, who asks me, "Sammy, have you rung up their purchase?" I thought and said, "No." But I wasn't thinking about that. I go through the punches, 4, 9, crock, tot, It's more complicated than you think, and after you do it often enough, it begins to make a little song. And then you hear the words to, in my case, hello, bing, there you go, gong, happy people, splat. The splat being the drawer flying out. I increased the bill tenderly, as you can imagine it just having come from between the smoothest scoops of vanilla I had ever known there were, and passed half and a penny into her narrow pink palm, and nestled the herrings in a bag and twisted its neck and handed over all the time thinking. The girls who'd blame them are in a hurry to get out, so I say, I quit. To Langle quick enough for them to hear, and hoping they'll stop and watch me, their unsuspected hero. They keep right on going, into the electric eye. The door flies open and they flicker across the lot to their car. Queenie in plaid and big tall Goonie. Not that as a raw material she was so bad. Leaving me with Langle and a kink in his eyebrow. Did you say something, Sammy? I said I quit. I thought you did. You didn't have to embarrass them. I started to say something that came out fiddle-dee-doo. It's a saying of my grandmother's, and I know she would have been pleased. I don't think you know what you're saying, Langle said. I know you don't, I said, but I do. I pull the bow at the back of my apron and start shrugging it off my shoulders. A couple of customers that had been heading for my slot began to knock against each other, like a scared pigs in a chute. Langle sighs and begins to look very patient and old and gray. He's been a friend of my parents for years. Sammy, you don't want to do this to your mom and dad, he tells me. It's true, I don't. But it seems to me that once you begin a gesture, it's fatal not to go through with it. I fold the apron. Sammy stitched in red on the pocket and put it on the counter, dropping the bow tie on top of it. The bow tie is theirs, if you ever wondered. You'll feel this for the rest of your life, Langle says. And I know that's true too, but remembering how he made that pretty girl blush makes me so scrunchy inside. I punch the no-sale tab, and the machine whirs, people, into the drawer, splats out. One advantage to this scene taking place in the summer, I can follow this up with a clean exit. There's no fumbling around, getting a coat and galoshes. I just saunter into the electric eye in my white shirt that my mother ironed the night before, and the door heaves itself open. Outside, the sunshine is skating around on the asphalt. I look around for my girls, but they're gone, of course. There wasn't anybody but some young married screaming with her children about some candy they didn't get by the door of a powder blue Falcon station wagon. Looking back in the big windows, over the bags of peat moss and aluminum lawn furniture stacked on the pavement, I could see Langle, in my place in the slot, checking the sheep through. His face was dark gray and his back stiff, as if he'd just had an injection of iron, and my stomach kind of fell as I felt how hard the world was going to be for me hereafter. The original story by John Updike ends with him going to the beach and waiting for the girls. But in any revision or in any story, he never finds the girls, and he's an unsung hero and never really seen of or heard from again. For most people, it's a really sad or really uplifting story because most people take it one of two ways. One, they see it as a very good thing. He stood up for his morals and principles, and like he said, he didn't go back to groveling to the man. And, I mean, it makes him a powerful character for doing it. It's kind of silly. I mean, he made a girl blush, and so he quit his job. Back in the time frame that the story is placed, it was very important for him to have a job, and being so young, he could probably go places with it, but he'd thrown it all away. And in a small town, there probably weren't very many job options available beside that one. The other thing is most people think he's just a rebellious or silly teen. They think that he just went a little overboard with it, And the way that he calls them sheep or pigs in a chute, he basically is, has a stick it to the man attitude. And he basically is just tired with it. And most people think this isn't really the event that brought him to quit, but rather the stressor point. He'd been through all this so much and didn't really like his job. He thought everyone there was sheep, and so he just quit. He was done. He didn't want to work anymore, and so he didn't. And those are really the two ways you can take the story. In the class that we did it in, we like to fantasize about maybe what would have happened later. And the real thing was, most people felt sad for him, but imagined that he would continue on with his life. He's 19, he's still got plenty of years to go, and in the original story, going off the basis of that, like some of us did, he probably isn't going to have a sturdy relationship or a job for a while because he seems really intent on finding this Queenie, talking to her and meeting with her. It's almost like he wants recognition and wants to be known, but I think really is just sticking up for his morals and principles. And so that is A&P by John Updike.